Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment in my Changing Lives series of live conversations with fellow writers over age 50 about how our beliefs and lives have changed for the better as we've aged. And we've kind of more fully claimed our authentic selves and how we want to live and are less worried about what others will think. And so my guest today is Dr. Tammy, and she uh, was originally a plastic surgeon and has chosen to become a soul surgeon. And I'm going to before I have her introduce herself, I'll briefly introduce myself for those of you who may not already be familiar with my work. My Substack is Changing Lives, and it's basically the tagline is for anyone who wants to change lives, starting with their own. And because I believe it's impossible to change the world if we don't do our inner work first and come from a centered space of love and compassion, even when we're provoked. And I could go on about that, but anyway, that's my Changing Lives Substack. I have a huge archive of written posts because I started in 2022 when notes and lives and all of this stuff didn't even exist. But I have switched to doing these lives primarily because I love them so much and I'm all about interaction. And so I'm also going to be starting a membership community for my subscribers in September. But anyway, it's wonderful that you're all here, or if you watch this replay later, thanks for your interest. And I will let Dr. Tammy say more about herself and her work.
What a treat. Hi, Wendy. Hi, everyone. I see you popping on the screen. Thanks for coming on. All of you that are here and everyone who's watching the recording. Love what you're doing, Wendy. Changing lives. I mean, it doesn't get better than that title, honestly. If we needed to pick two words, that's it. I think between your changing lives and my permission slips, I mean, come on, we've kind of said it all.
Yep.
So thank you for inviting me on here. Love the interviews you're doing. Love doing these live streams. And this is not a virtual background. Wendy asked me, is that a virtual background? Nope, that's the sky and the ocean. And you could see my hair dancing in the wind. So it's going to be dancing with us here. Whenever I can do an outdoor live stream, I love to just share the energy of the outdoor with us. So let's just take a moment, if you don't mind, just to land so that I can get centered and grounded. You can close your eyes or eyes open, whatever feels good to you. It's exciting to be together, to share our hearts, to share our energy, and to support each other on this life path, which is a bumpy one often, I think, for most of us. So thank you. Thank you. Just a couple of deep breaths really makes a huge difference. This allows us to center, to ground, to come down from the mind.
Yes.
Mind stream, right? And it is a stream of thoughts into the body, into the physical body, into the here and now. So I appreciate your inviting me. And I love sharing with others my journey. Some people are sometimes inspired by it. I'm inspired by your journey, Wendy. So I'll just dive into it for those who may not have come across my page. My publication is called Permission Slips. It's under my full name, Dr. Tammy Fairman. And I have shapeshifted and transformed from plastic surgeon to soul surgeon. So as you mentioned, Wendy, I worked as a plastic and reconstructive surgeon and microsurgeon. Actually, I did a fellowship in microsurgery, which is very intricate, microscopic work with a huge operating microscope that you look through. I used to sit there with my 9-month pregnant belly, trying to get close to the microscope, but my belly was in the way. Those were the days. And that was earlier on in my practice, 25 years ago. And then as I had 5 kids, I began to shift my practice from reconstructions to elective cosmetic surgery because the timing of those surgeries, less emergencies, just smoother sailing, so to speak, with less sick patients. It just became more conducive to my raising my 5 kids, being involved in their lives, and also doing the surgeries that I loved. And I think I wrote about this in one of my articles that I built a wellness center in my surgical practice. So that allowed me to have these deeper conversations and take my patients on true transformational journeys. So it wasn't just, let's put a little Botox here, let's do a little filler here, or lift whatever needs to be
Mm.
lifted at the moment. It was really about dressing the physical body, sure, through the scalpel. That's what patients wanted. And also being able to have the deeper connections through the wellness center, where we had, Ayurvedic teaching classes in the ancient medical system of Ayurveda from India, where we had Reiki and chakra alignment and all the good stuff, so that we can go deeper beyond just the superficial self. And in one of these consultations with a patient of mine, she said to me, Dr. Tammy, I come for the Botox, but I stay for the therapy. You're not a plastic surgeon, you're a soul surgeon. And it kind of stuck. Everybody loved it. And so I just kept that name. And a few years ago, I was doing this work through my wellness center for nearly 10 years. And a few years ago, post COVID, I had a deep conversation, me, myself, and I. We all sat down and got together, and I asked myself that hard question that few of us address, and I invite you, all of you listening here, to consider. And the question is, what do you want? What do I want at this time in my life? Not when I was 8 years old
Mhm.
and decided I was going to be a surgeon, but now. And this was around COVID and post COVID. And I realized after quarantine, when I went back to work, wasn't hitting the same way. I just wasn't feeling as connected to the surgical part that I'd been doing for nearly 3 decades. And I was feeling much more connected to the deeper transformations. And I realized that, yes, the body, it's a beautiful thing to feel good in our bodies. Of course, we want to feel strong. We want to feel without disease. We want to feel aligned. And yet, what I realized was that the deep transformational changes that my patients would make were not at the edge of my scalpel. They were really in the deeper connections as a soul surgeon. So I like to say, I used to lift faces. Now I lift the veil. I lift the masks that we wear, that we show up in our lives through these facades and through the roles. Um,
I love that so much, and it's so similar to the work that I do through my coaching, and I have a Zoom spiritual group that started as a 6-week group, and people loved it so much. They're like, "Can we pay to keep meeting?" There's so few safe spaces to delve deep into this stuff and share what we authentically believe and the things we're questioning and want to leave behind that maybe our families and bosses or whoever it might be are not open to accepting. And so, yeah, that the question of, what do I really want, as opposed to, um, what have I been taught I'm supposed to want? What does society say is the acceptable thing to want? And every conversation I've had, that's been a recurring theme, that as we have, gotten to 50, 60, 70, 80 for some people, we have embraced our authentic selves more and said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Society's values are so toxic to my well being and so focused on achievement and justifying your right to exist by making money or getting awards. And that's not what's really important. Success to me is helping others heal and inspiring them and being an example of, yes, it is possible to transform your life no matter how old you are. Leave the job that's keeping you caged, even though you may take a financial hit, at least initially, it's totally worth it. All that kind of stuff.
I love that, Wendy. I really do. And a couple of things about that. It's scary, it takes a lot of courage to leave. I didn't realize it when I left nearly 4 years ago when I closed my surgical practice. I really didn't realize the level of courage that it took. Of course, I spent the next many months just crying and grieving the loss of this identity of the work that I had done for nearly 30 years, for the majority of my adult life and even my young life, all the training and the studying. um, it doesn't mean it's easy, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be easy. It doesn't have to feel, like a walk in the park.
Yeah,
So
any
I,
transformation that's a real transformation is never going to feel easy, because if if it did, we'd still be in our comfort zone doing the same things, right?
Good
And in
point.
my case, I was initially kind of forced to make the transition. Um, I, I'm a former pastor, and the congregation I served in 2020, the council didn't really want to follow the COVID safety protocols that I thought were very important, and that tied into political disagreements. And anyway, so they abruptly, with no prior conversation, I was totally blindsided. Said, "We want you gone within 2 weeks." And even the rest of the congregation was blindsided. They didn't know what was happening. And but anyway, after that, as my husband, who was also a pastor, and I interviewed with other congregations, that's when the realization came for me that no, I'm not willing to stay silent about things I'm passionate about in order to appease other people and get their money or their loyalty, whatever. And more than that, it was a spiritual issue primarily, that I can't pretend to believe these things or pretend I think that God is supporting that behavior, that cruelty, that the whole nine. And so, yeah, for my own well
Hmm.
being and to be true to myself, I had to say, no, I am done with this. Whatever it takes, I will find another way. And so my writing began when I wrote investigative feature articles about why Christians must denounce Christian nationalism, and a book review of Brian McLaren's "Do I Stay Christian?" and those kinds of articles. And then I came to Substack, and initially I was like, I am not going to touch anything related to religion or spirituality because it's too controversial, and everybody has their own path. But I couldn't separate mental health from spiritual health, essentially. And I realized that. And so now I bridge the two, and I'm very open about, this is what I believe. But in my spiritual groups and in my coaching, my goal is to help people find and trust their own answers, not to give them mine. Um, because that's never healthy. Like, even if my answer is right for them, it's better for them to discover it for themselves than to be given it. Right.
Sure. Absolutely. I love that, Wendy. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
You certainly have a unique path and a unique lens on the spiritual path, through your religious journey. And we each have our own path. I'm seeing people popping on the screen, and anybody watching the recording later. I appreciate all the little hearts. I love all the
Yes,
little hearts
me too.
climbing up. And I think from what you shared, the important thing is for all of us to realize that there are a lot of people talking the talk on Substack, on Instagram, all over in
Mhm.
life, right? But I think it is important to distinguish the talking the talk from walking the walk, right? So I think that that's something that is really important to know, that until we do our own work, our own inner work, walk that path, and it's not comfortable. It's usually not comfortable. But once we clean up our own side of the street, so to speak, then we can show up to support others. Now, does that mean that I have to be perfect and feeling like I'm all done with all my stuff? No, I mean, till our last breath, I think we're
Right.
going to find things to uncover and unroof. But at the same time, it's also, challenging to just read a book and become a guru. I think that
Yes.
we have a lot of, in this instant gratification society, and everybody wanting to be an influencer. I think we come across a lot of that. And it's important to distinguish and differentiate and really trust yourself. So you do coaching, I work as a spiritual transformational life coach as well. When people connect with those that they want to work with, I think it is important to really feel into it and ask yourself, do I feel trusting? Do I feel like this person has done their own inner work? Because at the end of the day, Wendy, I can only take you as far as I've taken myself. If I
Exactly.
haven't done that work within myself, I can't take you to spaces that I haven't been. So
Yeah.
until I've met my own, right? Until I've met my own pain, my own grief, my own challenges, my anger, my frustration, whatever it is for me, we all have our own little bag of goodies that
Yep.
life gifts us in
Mhm.
terms of challenges. Until I meet myself, I don't really have the agency to take you there. So I love to hear your path, and so many beautiful people that are really doing the work within to then be able to support it outwardly.
Yeah, and I will add to that that the other piece of my story is that when my husband and I both unexpectedly were forced out as pastors, and then the subsequent interviews, we came to realize this just the whole system is not right for us. We're done with this. Um, I crashed and burned big time. I went into a severe depression, had suicidal ideations for like a year, and eventually, with therapy, with
Sure.
finally finding the right medication, and discovering that my real issue was ADHD, and the depression was kind of a subset of that. And anyway, it was a long and painful
Yeah.
transformation process, as you've said, and it's ongoing. And I think that's the
Sure.
easiest way to tell whether a spiritual guru or coach or whoever is actually legitimate, is whether they're willing to be honest and own
Yeah.
that they haven't arrived and they don't have all the answers in life all figured out. And
Love
they're
that.
willing to be vulnerable and have that connection by saying, yeah, I've been there. I get how hard it is.
100%. I love that. And this reminds me that, when I worked as a plastic surgeon for many, many years, there was a facade that I carried. People didn't want to come in and see their surgeon, crying
Right.
about their divorce or, upset that their child is going through depression or all the things that I went through that I speak of and I write about openly. They didn't want to see that. They wanted the illusion. They wanted to come in and see this perfectly put together, beautifully arranged human that they could make a fantasy about. Wow, Dr. Tammy, she's got it all together. She's got a beautiful marriage, 5 kids, a thriving practice, money, prestige, whatever it is, whatever story they were making about
Yeah.
me. And I fed into it because
Mhm.
culturally and societally, it's not acceptable to start sharing with my patients.
Right.
That is very contrary to the old school code, of doctor patient dynamic. As
Same with
I
being a pastor. Absolute
Right,
identical.
yes,
Yeah.
there is some kind of boundary there. And the deeper and deeper I got into the wellness center and the soul surgery work, the spiritual work, I realized I can no longer keep myself separated. So when my patients started coming in, and I would say predominantly a female clientele, women, probably 90% of my patients were women. And when they would come in and start telling me, because I was truly a confidant for many of them, I would hear from them before anybody in their lives. I would hear about cancer diagnoses. I would hear about their child going into an addiction recovery program. I would hear about their divorce before they even told their husbands they were divorcing.
Same. Yeah.
Exactly. It is the confidence there. I think it's your plastic surgeon, your pastor, and your hairdresser. They hear it all, right?
And bartenders.
And bartender, though I don't drink, but I guess for
Yeah.
some people at the bar, that's also, where you divulge. So I didn't really realize how much my patients were counting on me. And here I am as a surgeon holding this facade of this perfectly put together human. And I'm struggling. I had a very difficult divorce. This is going back quite a few years. I had my oldest daughter with deep depression as a teenager, which I had never dealt with depression before, not personally or in my family. So I was not adept, despite being a physician and a surgeon. I didn't know how to handle her depression. So that was challenging. And then my best friend, who's medium, my aunt, whose jewelry I wear, and she's always with me. And actually, she's in the ocean. So everybody say hi, medium, because we spread her ashes in the ocean years ago. So Medium was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and I was supporting her through my divorce, through my daughter's depression, and through her eventual death. So I joke that life gifted me triple D's: death, depression, and divorce. My patients were not privy to any of this. And it started becoming difficult to hold this facade of this perfectly put together surgeon. So when my patients began to share with me, I'm going through this divorce, I would say, you know what? Me too. They would be shocked. Really? I didn't know what happened. And all of a sudden, the walls began to dissolve. And it got to the point where I realized I can no longer live in this space of facade. I can no longer just be this surgeon that people think has it all together. I want to be in the space of reality, of
Yeah.
realness, of sharing, of vulnerability.
Mhm.
And so slowly, the journey of soul surgeon, of course, has taken its shape. And it probably has taken about the 10 years for me to be able to really claim it and come out and say, yeah, this is the work that I do. I no longer need the scalpel. I can now, instead of lifting the faces, as I said before, I can lift the veils, lift the masks. No anesthesia needed,
Mm.
no scalpel. Although I'm going to tell you that it's sometimes just as painful as surgery. And that's okay because we do it together. And that's the other thing, Wendy. We don't have to do this life alone. You know, when I was going through these triple Ds, you know, death, depression, divorce, I really was alone. You know, I did not share with anyone because the facade was
Mhm.
Superwoman. Superwoman doesn't have anybody to help her out. I
Right?
guess Batman had Robin, but Superwoman was girl, she was doing it alone.
Yeah.
And so I really struggled doing this alone. We're talking 16 years and further back. That's when I started my spiritual journey. And so I want people to know, those of you that are here on the live stream, thank you for joining us. And those of you watching and recording, I want you to know that you don't have to do it alone. And if there's one thing I could tell the me of nearly 20 years ago that was just holding up this facade and being the superwoman with my cape floating in the breeze, all on my own, I would tell her, you don't need to do this alone, my darling. You don't have to do this life alone. We're here for each other.
Mm.
You know, I have a beautiful friend and he's very well known. I often quote him, Mark Nepo. He's here on Substack. He just started coming on Substack. He's a spiritual poet. And he said, he wrote, amongst his many, many beautiful books and poems, he says, life is made just difficult enough that we need each other.
Mm.
So let's lean into that. Let's lean into each other. Let's not live from the ego space of, I got this, you know, I can be strong. Strong for what? Strong for who? When we can be strong, we are that. And when we can't, that's okay too. We lean into each other. So that's what I want to invite everybody into. And lastly, as you said, you have this beautiful group that you've created to get together, which I love also. I love the live stream and I love the interactive
Mm.
Zoom
Same.
groups. And I have one actually coming up this Sunday. If anybody here wants to join, it's called The Core, the Circle of Radiant Expansion. And I have an article on my newsletter called Permission Slips. There's an article that says how to join the core. And if you're not sure, you can just DM me. Let's see, we're at 3 p.m. Eastern this Sunday, July 13th. I hold it once a month. Certainly, as we get deeper into it, we can hold it more often. But it's a space to be real, like your space. You know, it's a space to just show up vulnerably, the good, the bad, and the beautifully ugly, as is. We don't need to hide. Let's lift those veils.
And the other thing I would add to that, that I have discovered for myself, in addition to the wonderful groups that I lead and the people that come to me, and it's, you know, kind of I'm leading the discussion, and I'm being vulnerable and sharing too and participating, but still in my role as leader, there's a difference. So I also am in groups where I am solely a participant, and I think
So
that's
important.
very important. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So important. You know, many of us here are healers. We are. We do lead groups, we do lead one-on-ones, we support others, and we need that healing. We need to sit in the space of receiving, like you said. Otherwise, we're constantly just giving away, and there's an energetic imbalance there. So I agree with you 100%. I love that reminder, Wendy, that we also need to sit in the space where we get to receive. We get to receive the love, support, the validation, whatever it is that the medicine is for us in that moment. And
Yes.
sometimes, Wendy, the medicine is just silence. It's
Hmm.
just silence, you know? Silence
Or a
has
hug,
become,
or
or a virtual hug if we're on Zoom, or
yeah.
a personal hug if we're in person, of course. But, you know, the deeper I dive into silence through many silent retreats on my journey, I have a newfound reverence for silence. And often what we need, especially in the craziness of this world, right? The busyness of this world, is we need to just write it down and meet
Although I
each
will
other in
say
that
kind of a
space.
counterpoint to that, because it flashed by in the chat too fast for me to read it all, but
Oh,
someone speaking about being shamed and you know, with the silent treatment. And
oh,
I once went to a silent retreat where like even during meal times we weren't supposed to talk at all. And for some people, yes, it's spiritually transformative to sit in that silent space. But for me, I'm an introvert. I'm silent with myself all the time. I journal every day, usually twice a day. So that's not what I needed. And especially it
Yeah.
felt so forced on me. I mean, they took away our watches, they took away our phones, and this was like a normal church retreat group that has a good reputation that continues, that people go to, and rave about. And that's why I went, because so
Yeah.
many people had said, "Oh, you must do this. It's so awesome." And
Yeah.
I went and I was like, this feels like abuse to me. If I want to leave now. Um,
Absolutely. Listen, remember, I mean, I really appreciate that. And I'm going back here, trying to read. Angela, thank you so much for your share here. You're very vulnerable and open share about your journey and how challenging it's been. I'm not speaking of the silent treatment. That is very, very different. What you're describing, Wendy, and maybe what it's possible that Angela might have experienced a little bit and some others might have experienced, you know, um, that's the kind of silence that we're speaking of that is a stonewalling, and that's emotionally abusive. A
yes.
silence where you're ostracized, where you're pushed away. It's often done through narcissistic abuse, where
Mhm.
there's a narcissist and kind of ends up pushing you out of the way. That's a very different type of silence. I'm speaking of sacred silence. I'm
Yes.
speaking of a noble silence. Very, very different. And of course, it's hard to speak of silence. We need to experience it. It's actually a silence that is deeply filled with love and fullness and nourishment. So very, very different. So thank you for that, Wendy, and Angela, also for your comments, because it's really important to remember to define and identify what are we exactly talking about here. There are many, many kinds of silence, and remember that words carry a lot of energy. They carry a lot of different meanings. So I love this reminder and invitation to actually define what are we speaking of. So
Yeah.
silence that is more of a stonewalling silence, that is covertly narcissistic silence. That's a no-no. That's a no good. That is unhealthy, very unhealthy and abusive. But when we're speaking of a sacred, noble silence where we get to sit with the depth of our being in love, through love, as love, that was the silence
Yes.
I was speaking of. But yes, there are so many. Thank you, Angela, for being here. Enjoy
Yes.
normal life and join us
And
again
and
soon.
yeah, Angela, I get that it can be hard to get back to normal life. When I was recovering from my severe depression, after months of some days not getting out of bed at all, and a victory was like taking a shower and getting dressed, right? Um, it was a gradual process. And like my gratitude journal, the Wendy of a few years ago scoffed at all that stuff and wouldn't have even been open to trying it. And when I first did it, it was like a struggle to come up with one thing I was grateful for each night. Now I easily come up with 5 little things from the day, and they're different each day, except for my husband is always number 1. We've been married since 1991, and he's kind of my rock. But
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, even going out in public, and because I'm an introvert, it's also hard for me to make friends. I'm comfortable going out to eat totally by myself, or walking in the park, or doing whatever. In fact, I like it better a lot of times, because then it's just, what do I want to do, and not have to take into account the other person's conflicting desires, right? Um, but yeah, the silence, that's either, I choose to be alone in silence, and tune into my authentic thoughts and feelings, get in touch with them, versus distracting myself with the phone or other, watching something, whatever it might be. And also the sacred silence of, both as a pastor and now as a coach and a group leader, of just like you said, being with someone in their grief or their depression or whatever challenge, instead of trying to fix it for them and feel like you need to say something. And that's when the harmful cliches come out about everything happens for a reason, or you'll see, this will turn out for the best. And maybe it will down the line, but that's not helpful when you're in the moment in extreme pain, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, just being there in silence is so much more helpful than feeling like you need to say something. And I saw that over and over again as I, led funerals, or was in settings where I, could see and hear other people trying to comfort someone and actually making it worse. If they could have just
Hmm.
been silent and supportive, it would have been
Yes.
so much more helpful.
Yeah, I think sometimes when we are speaking and we're attempting to comfort someone, it really is for our own selves, you
Yes.
know,
We feel
that
uncomfortable. Right.
we feel uncomfortable with the silence, and many people do feel uncomfortable. But when we can sit together in love, in silence, often that's when the tears come and that's when the emotion comes and there's a release because,
Yes.
words don't teach. Words are the fingers pointing at the moon, but we often mistake them for the moon. The finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. So we need to also remember that sometimes we use words and language as a distraction. Because if
Yes.
we were just a little bit more still and a little bit more quiet or a little bit more silent within, all the going around in our mind,
Right.
if we can still that a little bit, we meet parts of ourselves that we're trying to run away from.
Yes.
So, and it's very hard to do that alone, Wendy, and everyone on the chat. It's not an easy thing, as Wendy said, she's been to therapy, to support your depression and whatever you went through after your incident.
Mhm.
For me, also, I have a transformational coach who's in her 80s, who is an incredible woman who supports me because we have these blinders on, we have these blind spots. We can't see ourselves as clearly as someone outside of ourselves. So
Yes.
I will give her a call and I will say, no, I'm feeling this thing. What do you think? And she'll give me one question or one pointer. Like you said, Wendy, without giving the answer, no one has the answers to your life.
Right.
And if they tell you they do, run in the other direction.
Exactly.
Nobody has the answers to your life, but we can be of support and we can point each other to the truth within our own selves. So she might, when I call her up, she might guide me to a question that helps me. Oh, yes, yes, that's what's going on for me here. And then I move through it. So it is really
Yes.
important to have somebody that you trust, that you feel a connection with, that you can work with, to see your blind spots.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this stuff can take a really long time, or we run away from it because it's
Yes.
it's not easy to do alone, nor do you
Mhm.
need to.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's essential. And the other piece is, the saying of, when you know better, you do better. Well, in some cases, definitely that is true for me, but I also can use that to beat myself up. It's like, I know all these self-care practices. I know how much it helps when I walk in the park and the journaling and all the things. And so if I don't do it, then I beat myself up for not doing what I know I need to do. And then on top of that, I beat myself up for beating myself up because I know better than that,
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's a beautiful, vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. A lot of what I do as a soul surgeon, Wendy, with people that I work with, is I help them zoom out because we are so zoomed into to our stuff, right? The issues that we're going through, the day-to-day difficulties, and we all have them because we're all living as humans, human
Yes.
beings. But there is a lot of humaning here, right? And the humaning is not easy. We get this body that doesn't always comply. Look, we get this hair that's flying in the wind when I wanted to just stay down. I mean, life is not easy in the human realm, right? So what I help people do often is really zoom out of the me and zoom into that eternal awareness, that eternal consciousness, which is beyond the human part. Many of us are not connected with it. Now, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Those that are religious can call it God. Those that are spiritual, we sometimes call it the universe, or I like to call it the mystery because I'm not saying it's not God. I'm not saying it's not a mystery. It just is the unknown. So that feels
Yeah,
more
I like
comfortable
to
for
call it
me.
divine love or divine wisdom, source of
Exactly.
all being, things like that.
Beautiful.
Sometimes I do still use the term God because it's so ingrained in me, but
Of
I don't
course.
mean by God what other people mean, basically. And that
It's a
was the other
loaded
reason I
word.
couldn't be a pastor was because church is so much about the head stuff and reciting prayers and singing songs, and some of them, could touch me and be meaningful, but uh, a spiritual experience for me is being out in nature and actually communicating with God versus talking about God.
Beautiful. And you're speaking of an embodiment, the embodied experience. And that's where we go full circle back to the words. Words don't teach, words point us.
Mm.
But when we have an experience of nature, it's beyond any conversation we can have, despite conversations being very nourishing and fruitful. But, it's kind of like the saying that we can talk about honey all day long. I can give you the chemical structure of honey. I can tell you where it's made, how it's made, all of that good stuff. But I don't really know honey until I put a drop of honey on my tongue. And that is the experience of honey. Completely different than talking about honey.
Yes.
So
And
I love
Angela says she calls it the intelligent source of creation. I know Elizabeth Gilbert
beautiful,
often says soul as an acronym for source of unconditional love. And I like that a lot too. Um,
beautiful.
but yeah,
Yeah, find
the
find
point
your
is God,
language.
there is no one name for it because obviously the divine is beyond human comprehension. We can each, encounter it in the way that's meaningful for us, but we're each encountering like a small piece of a larger being, force field, energy, however you can conceive of it. Um, so there's no right or wrong name for it or way of experiencing it. That was the biggest reason I wanted to do the spiritual group and the reason people wanted to stay after the 6 weeks ended and keep meeting was that, I had a pagan in the group, I had an atheist, I had people really into tarot cards, astrology, who had gotten the message from either society as a whole or their family members who were still in church or whoever, that kind of spirituality was not only not okay, but maybe even dangerous. And, they might go to hell because of it and all the things, right? And so to be in a group with others that were just like, yeah, I've had an experience similar to that, or that sounds really interesting. I'm curious, tell me more about that. And without the judgment, without that's not okay, that's not the right way. Um,
I love that, Wendy. I love what you're saying, just the full deck of cards, right?
yes,
In the group. And this is something to remind ourselves also that the growth, the exploration, the deepening of the evolution of our being of ourselves in this life most often, not exclusively, but most often happens in relation. So when we join a group, we get to see that we're not alone, that we
yes,
really are all having this human experience. Of course, the details will vary, right? Not everyone is a plastic surgeon with with a
right.
divorce and, my story basically. But the humanness of it is a universal experience. And we get to see that we really are here together. And the growth happens in the dynamic interrelational space. So it is important to come back into community, as some of the people here are feeling, as they're writing on the chat, feeling some sense of isolation, needing to come back into community. Come into these spiritual spaces that feel good for you, where you can get the support that you need. And the growth will be, I'm pretty confident of this. I don't know it for a fact, but from my experience, the growth becomes exponential because it's all of us sharing our energy and our wisdom together.
And that was one gift of my severe depression because I was so utterly desperate. And my only support person was my husband, who is absolutely fantastic. But I mean, he was getting overwhelmed too, worrying,
Right.
is his wife going to be alive when he gets home from work? Right. And so I needed people who weren't as emotionally involved in the situation. And I literally, like on Facebook, I reached out to like old high school and college friends. I reconnected with people that I had been close to years ago, but we hadn't even talked in years because of that desperation. And now, I have renewed some really close friendships and they had stuff to share too. Um, so in addition to, creating what I needed, basically the groups and so forth, um, also just being open to realizing I really need this. I just joined a local book club because I don't have any local in-person friends. My husband and I've only lived here for a couple years.
Mhm.
And, I have like superficial acquaintances, but the deep level true friends that you can share anything with at any time of night, basically. But so I joined this book club just for that additional socialization and to meet people that I might have something in common with. Because it's so hard for adults to make new friends in general, and especially for introverts like me. But I just learned I've got to put myself out there because I really need this. And it
Yeah.
helps. It's hard, but it helps.
Yeah. I really love that you're doing that for yourself. And I think a lot of us post COVID, with quarantine and the
Hmm.
isolation and the loneliness pandemic that we've been experiencing, I think that we are wanting to connect and we want to be in community, ideally in person, of course.
Right.
And I think all of us benefit from being in-person connections with people in our community. And the next best thing is this
Yes.
kind of live stream and the Zoom groups. I think that offers a level of support that is still extremely valuable. I've been doing Zoom groups since pre-COVID, and then of course they took off with COVID.
Right.
And it's always so amazing to me the level of sacred intimacy that is created and that is nourished in these Zoom spaces, with a certain leadership and holding of a container and a space. It really is incredible. So if you can't get out because of your work schedule or you can't find an in-person group, that's okay. Don't knock yourself for it. Find these Zoom spaces. Wendy has one. I have my space coming up this Sunday, the core space. Create these spaces for yourself. They're out there. They're either free or extremely affordable. Um, yeah, yeah. Just give yourself what you need. This is your one wild and precious life. As far as we know, there may be more, but for now, this is your one wild and precious life. As Mary Oliver, the poet, invites us to ask, what will you
Yeah.
do? What will you do with your one wild and precious life? I
And
didn't use
in
body
terms of
painting.
free
That's what I
resources,
did.
I would add NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, is a great place to start. They have tons of free online groups. That's kind of how I started during my depression. And now I'm a trained facilitator for one of the recovery support peer groups. But they also have all kinds of resources on their page for family members of people who are dealing with depression or other
Beautiful.
significant mental health challenges. And even if you're not, I mean, the resources can still help anyone deal with
Of
anxiety who
course.
doesn't feel anxiety at times or feel despair at times. Um, and yeah, that it's just so important to however you get that support. It is out there, and the free public gathering that I'm having is going to be on September 7th. And then after that, those who do want to go deeper, I'm going to form a membership community where we will meet on Zoom consistently. Um, because I discovered again, like when I first did the 6 week spirituality group, and everyone was like, "No, please, we need to keep meeting." That there is such a great need for authentic community where people don't instantly get shamed or shouted down or be told by someone else like your way is wrong, and if you don't accept my beliefs you're going to burn in hell, you're going to be miserable, we'll never make money, whatever it might be, right? So yeah, definitely sign up for the September 7th gathering if you're interested. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to noon Central Time on Zoom. And my Substack homepage has some info, and I regularly post a link on notes and so forth. But anyway, yeah. And the other thing, so I can't believe it's already 2:43, but I for sure want to talk about your body painting experience because for your 50th birthday, that was your gift to yourself, and it was so beautiful. And for anyone who hasn't read her permission slip Substack intro post that includes photos of it, and just I highly recommend it. But say more about it, please.
Yeah, that was quite the experience. Yeah, I posted a couple of photos there. Everything very respectful, very tasteful. So don't go looking for anything other than that. But I when I turned 50, my best friend had just died. She was my mother's younger sister, my aunt, and we were just soul sisters, BFFs. And she developed ovarian cancer, and I carried her through it for the 3.5 year journey of her cancer journey. And she died in February, and my birthday's in June. I just had another birthday a couple weeks ago, and I was feeling really down, really, really down. And I thought, what can I do to feel the aliveness? And as women in particular, men too, but predominantly women, we have a lot of body issues. A lot of us have challenges with our body form, with all the societal messaging. And of course, being a plastic surgeon, I was in the beauty industry, the world of the physical form for so many decades. And it just came to me as an epiphany to do a body painting. There was an artist that I knew, and he spray paints the body. You'll see the photo on my Substack on the introductory post that says, "Start here, me, myself, and I." And My aunt loved unicorns. She actually had this beautiful big stuffed animal unicorn at the end of her life and at home hospice. And when he said to me, the artist said, "What would you like to do for your body painting?" And I said, I don't know, just do something with a unicorn." And he ended up creating a unicorn on the front of my body and on the back of my body, just a full body, also painted my face. And it was really the experience of a lifetime. I'd never done anything like that. And to have he was a young man, a beautiful, beautiful artist, you know, 2 inches from your breasts and your navel, navel and all of your areas with a spray paint, just really, really close, doing what he was doing. And you're just standing there very exposed, very vulnerable. Um, Learning to love and accept your body as is, as he began to embellish it in the most beautiful, loving way, it really brought me a new connection with my body. And I ended up doing a second shoot. So the first one was for my 50th birthday, right after my best friend Medium died. And then the next year, I did the second shoot, which was a camouflage painting with the same artist. He has this technique where he paints you into the background. Again, you can see the photo, which is not at all digitally enhanced. It almost looks like magic. Like, how can you be inside of the background? But it's really magnificent. And that was also just an incredible experience of surrender, of acceptance, of love, of just allowing myself to be in my body, celebrating being this soul in this body and this beautiful being that we get to live through, right? The vehicle of the human body. So, yeah, I highly recommend it for all of you, anyone who's hearing this. If you have not done a full body nude painting, please go and do one. It is the experience of a lifetime, truly.
And the closest thing to that that I've ever done that I also highly recommend are the photograph sessions where you go and you wear lingerie and they do your hair and makeup for you, and
Yes.
then they take all these photographs. And yeah, I mean, I felt so much more beautiful doing that, and also it helped me like embrace my sexuality, because one of the other destructive parts of most religious upbringing, especially within Christianity, is the shame over female sexuality, and the idea that men can't control their lust, but we have to be the gatekeepers. And also, like, the only reason we would have sex is when we're married to have kids, right? With
Sure.
I'm child free, mostly by choice. um and yeah, there are just so many unhealthy messages around that, and then the overall societal emphasis on being thin, being physically
Sure.
attractive, um and not just in to attract a mate, but also it influences everything subconsciously, like whether an employer will hire you, um how you're perceived, like whether all kinds of studies have been done, and it's just
Oh, yeah.
appalling and so important for women to embrace the body they have. Now, that doesn't mean, if you feel like whatever aspect of you is physically unhealthy and limiting you in some way, and you decide,
Yeah.
I want to do this to be healthier, that's different. But I know so many women who were like, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And then once I do, I'm going to be so attractive and feel so good about myself. And if you don't feel good about yourself at whatever weight you're at now, you're not going to feel any better about yourself when you're however different you look. And I say that from personal experience.
Yeah,
Um,
inevitably we need to do the inner work.
yeah.
The outer work, having been a surgeon, having worked on the outer envelope, skin envelope, is lovely, and it creates very quick transformations. In a few hours in the operating room, I can change your entire
Mhm.
body, face and body. But if you don't do that inner transformational work and take that inner journey, like you said, the 500-pound self, you're going to take that into your 150-pound self. So
Right.
we really do benefit from doing the inner work. And then, like you said, if you need to do any outer work to feel yourself more aligned, sure. But doing just one over the other is really the reason why I left the scalpel. I realized that I was not getting the transformations that I wanted through the tip of the scalpel, through working as a surgeon. And, I was, I like to say this, it's kind of cute. I was smoothing out the wrinkles, right? Extrinsically. But now, through the deeper transformational path of soul surgery, I smooth out the inner landscape. So we get to have a smoothed out inner landscape,
Mm.
despite and irrespective of the outer skin. And that's what has us living from a space of peace, a space of calm, of equanimity, right? And lastly, if you are putting all of your eggs in the basket of something out there is going to make me happy, like
Mhm.
losing weight or right or anything like getting the right partner, any of those things, we are outsourcing our happiness.
Yes.
And that is a divine recipe for failure for happiness.
And for
Me-
being taken advantage of by an abuser who will manipulate you, make you trust them and think they have the answers you seek, and you'll give them all your money or just your trust, and they'll abuse you, but whatever it may
Sure.
be.
Yeah,
But
it's disempowering. It's a disempowering space to live from. So the more empowering space is, in my experience, is to take full responsibility for myself, emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, financially, in all the spaces. I am the creator of my experience. And then, yes, people come in and participate, but I'm not going to create an abuser and be a victim that blames an abuser. I'm going to take the full responsibility so that I can feel empowered in my journey. And that takes some support. It's not an easy thing. If you're in that situation, it's not easy to step out of it. So please don't hear this as, as my saying, well, just change your life. No, I deeply understand that it takes support. And that's why Wendy and I are here, sharing that
yeah,
there is support. There is definitely
and that
support.
we need it ourselves, and we've gotten lots of it, and it's not an easy process, and it's also an ongoing process. As we said earlier, it's not like we've arrived now because we fully understand ourselves and we know exactly how to recenter ourselves and peacefully deal with whatever conflict, drama. No, we still are human, and so we don't pretend that we've got life all figured out and our lives are
No.
totally perfect in every way now. Um,
Absolutely. There's no
and
pretending.
yeah, and even if I had it figured out, that doesn't mean that my way is going to work for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, we each have to create the life we want, and what the life you want may look very different than the life I want.
That's
And
right.
I can still help you get there because it's the same process of get unearthing what you truly want and what you truly believe, and giving yourself the freedom and the power to say, even though my family, my employer, my friends, whoever it might be, are trying to keep me where I am, I'm not willing to stay there anymore. I'm going here where I
And
want to
and
be.
that's right. And in essence, Wendy, no one can keep you where you are unless they are physically, unless you are
Yes.
hostage or you are
Right.
physically being held down. No one can keep you where you are. What keeps you where you are is your own belief systems and your
Yep.
own conditioned mind. So the beautiful thing about that is that there's deep empowerment and deep freedom in knowing that it's me. It's all here for me. So the freedom that I'm seeking is already and always right here. How
Yes.
to unlock it, that requires often a little bit of support because we do have blind spots and we just don't
Right.
see the path to that freedom. But the freedom is always here. There's no
Yes.
one keeping you there. When you say someone is keeping you there, you are self victimizing and you are creating yourself to be the victim of the blame game. And we live in a blaming, victimizing society. We don't want to play that game. We don't want to
Mhm.
give all our power out to someone else by blaming them. No, no, no. Let's take power. Let's take agency back and know that everything that I want is already here. I'm just looking for the path that will
Right.
guide me back to
Yeah,
myself.
that's a much better way to phrase it. What I meant by them keeping us here is that they have convinced us, we have adopted the beliefs
Yeah,
that they kind of forced on us initially
exactly.
or taught us
Yes.
as children. And so,
Yes.
yeah, we have the key to say, no, I don't really believe that, and I'm done, living that way that I thought I
Yes.
had to live to make someone else happy, and then I came to internalize and believe was the right way to live or the way I should or had to live. The freedom is saying, no, that's really not true. I can decide I'm going to do this instead or believe this instead. And they may not like it. They may try to prevent me from doing it, but I still can do it.
I love it. And I totally agree with that. And, a lot of people think that the conditioned beliefs take years and years to drop away. And you know what? Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes all it takes is one, two, three sessions with someone who can guide you back to your own light. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden you say, wow, it just drops away. And sometimes it does take longer. So I think also dropping the belief of, oh, this is hard and this is going to take forever and it's going to take me years. That's another belief. We don't know. So just showing up from that curious, open beginner's mind of, I just really don't know. I'm just going to show up and see what is here for me. That is really an opening. That's a doorway.
Yes. And a lot of people I work with have kind of started that process already. Like they understand what they want. They understand how they came to have the limiting beliefs that are keeping them stuck. And they just need help and support to kind of counter the people and their own head
Yes.
to keeping them where they are, and support them as they make the journey and find their path to who they want to be and how they want to live.
So
But a
important.
lot of
Yeah.
times they already know that, and if they don't, I can help them get in touch with that. But, my job is not to tell them, "Oh, this is what you should do. This is what you really want," right? It's to give them tools to help them figure it out, and support as they act on what they're realizing.
In the ancient, in the Eastern cultures, the ancient wisdom tells us that the elders, right? And I love because you talk about over 50, the elders are the wisdom keepers. And so, why would I not meet with an elder? Like I shared before, my transformational spiritual coach is 82. She's amazing. Why would I not meet with her and gain the benefit of her wisdom and have her mentoring? Because she knows something I don't know.
Mhm.
So, why do I need to reinvent the wheel? Why not get the treasures and the goods of all of those that have lived past their 50 years? And not to say that younger people don't have wisdom. Let me
Right.
tell you, my children have a ton of wisdom. But let's get the support. I think that's really the key of what we've been saying. Let's not do this alone.
And I have to add, since you mentioned the support of older women, one of my previous live guests was Melinda Blau, who at age 80 last year published her latest book.
Mm,
And it is titled The Wisdom Whisperers, Golden Guides to Grit, Grace, and Resilience, something like that in the subtitle. But the Wisdom Whisperers are her circle of nine, who she affectionately calls old ladies, who are all at least 20 years older than she is, that she has had been friends with at various stages in her life. And that's exactly her point, that we all need those people from a generation above us, like 2 decades, say,
exactly.
older than we are, to help us as we're making the journey they've already made. Um, and again, they
Beautiful.
each have their own experiences and personalities, but they all have something to offer, uh,
Beautiful.
and our society just normally marginalizes old people. They become invisible. We think they're done because, especially those that retire. I mean, many more of us now are continuing to work as entrepreneurs or whatever, But those who just had a long career and retire, it's like society decides, well, you're no longer productive. You're not contributing to society. You have no value. We don't, or they're so afraid of their own aging and death that they don't want to be around someone who is older, right? And it's so unfortunate and unhealthy because, as you said, other cultures are far wiser and truly honor the wisdom of the elders. And we would benefit from doing the same.
I agree. And I think we could do easily another hour on society and what is society.
Yes.
In effect, society is just the voice in our head. So again, I am not a fan of the blame self-victimization mindset where society tells us this and that. Not to discount it that there isn't an energy out there. Sure there is, but I still have agency and I can empower myself to say, okay, wait a minute. So this is kind of what I'm hearing out there. Do I subscribe to that or not? We have agency. We have the ability to decide, am I letting society in? What are you ingesting? Who are your friends? What is the environment that you're you're supporting yourself with or not supporting yourself that is guiding you to believe that you have been aged out of society. Because in
Mhm.
effect, society is just made of individuals like you and me and every single one of us on this live stream. So let's get out of this mindset of self victimization and blaming outside of ourselves. There is no society, there is me and the thoughts in my head, and that creates my reality. That gives me more agency.
Yeah, and the choices we make about how to interact with the
100%.
toxic aspects. For myself, a personal example is I had to essentially stop watching the news, not completely, put my head in the sand and be unaware of anything going on, but at the same time, not, need to know every detail or every
Yeah,
commentator's opinion about it and all the predictions of how much worse things are going to get, etc. How is that helpful to me? Why would I want to ingest that, and to use your words?
exactly.
So, yeah, I
Exactly.
I choose to surround myself with people who, like, do more than complain. They're taking action against what they don't like, um, and who, when they ask me, "How are you?" genuinely care and want to know. It's not a superficial pleasantry. I don't do the whole
Exactly.
cocktail party or
Chit chat.
networking chit chat. Yeah, I never had the
Yeah,
patience for that.
I
If we
agree.
can't be real with each
Awesome.
other, why would we even wanna be in
Yeah.
relationship?
I want to just in our last couple of minutes, I would love to offer everyone who's watching this or listening to this something that I offer my clients, which is as you're speaking about, the spaces that we walk into and invite into our lives. There's a very simple tool. Maybe you use this, Wendy, or some version of this, which is make a little list. Put a line in the middle of your paper, and on one side write energizers, and on the other side write drainers,
Yes.
and make a list of all the people, places, and things, including the TV shows, including, where you go, where you hang out, the podcasts you listen to, that truly energize you. If Wendy and I energize you, come hang out with
Right.
us. If we don't, if we drain you,
Mhm.
don't hang out with us.
Right.
So make your list of what are the people, places, and things in my life, the activities that I engage in that really drain and suck out my energy. And what are the ones that energize me, that uplift me, that inspire me to be that fullest, most authentic version of myself, that truest version of myself? And that's a very simple exercise that you can do. You can even write it just on your phone or just think it out loud. And then begin to make shifts in your life. Begin to shift out of the draining spaces. Now, if the draining is your entire family, you might have to do that slowly. I don't
Mhm.
know. But start to add more of the energizers into your life. And this helps you really to see, am I indulging in these really draining toxic spaces? And am I adding enough of the energizing, fulfilling, inspiring spaces into my life? So be your own advocate, self-advocate for your own well-being. That's really where it starts, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I would add to that, just on a daily basis. Like, for me, I have the tendency to hyper focus and not take breaks and other self-care things. And so, my list of energizers, one of them is, take a break, put my favorite music on, sing and dance to it. So
Love
your
it.
energizers don't have to be major things. They can be simple daily things that you take a 5 to 15 minute break or however long to do, to bring back your energy when you're feeling drained and depleted, or after a really upsetting conversation or whatever it might be.
Love
So,
it.
yeah,
You get a snap for that.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Love it. Awesome.
Well, we have reached our hour limit. Again, I could talk for hours longer, and I'm just so passionate about this, and I know you are too. So, for those watching us live, check out Tammy's Substack permission slips and mine, Changing Lives. You can also DM either of us if you want more details, like if you want the registration link for my September 7th free public gathering, which you don't have to be a subscriber to my newsletter, by the way, to attend. You don't even have to be on Substack. You can share it with your friends and family. It's literally just an initial conversation for whoever wants to show up and be real, basically. And then those that want to keep being real and go deeper, we'll have a smaller group that will be ongoing. But anyway, um, yeah, thank you all for watching. And if you watch this later, same thing. Thank you very much, Tammy, for sharing your wisdom. And it's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Wendy, for holding this space. Thank you to everyone who's on here, who's engaged by holding space, by listening, by sharing your energy and your patience with us, and everybody who's watching the live stream. Thank you. Thanks, Wendy.
Yes,
Let's do it again soon.
definitely. And thanks to all who posted in the chat. Sorry we couldn't respond to all of them, but we appreciate your comments as well and your likes and everything just to let us know that you appreciate what we're doing. So thanks again and see you next time. Bye.
Deep breath.